ask that those of you who are here, if you can engage in a conversation either through chat or chime in, feel comfortable doing that as we walk through. I am going to be talking today about AI and the art and science of teaching with tech. So I'm sure those of you who are here, who are listening, have learned what AI is and all the great things that it has brought into us within the last two years, 1 or 2 years. And so I really want to do a deep dive into what it means when it comes to learning. So we're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to look at the ways that AI has disrupted the learning process, hopefully for good. We're going to look at how to create new advantages and learning opportunities for students and faculty. We're also going to be looking at discovering new inclusive ways to engage learning and critical thinking that may surprise us. So just a little bit about me. I have a doctorate degree from Bowling Green State University. I have my doctorate in educational leadership. I also teach at Baker College in the COM 1010 and 1020 courses at Baker College at the Port Huron campus. I also work full-time as a project manager at Veterinary United. And I'm also working on my certification in leadership professionals and ethical and compliance. Also, I have worked on AI policies for safety and compliance, and I started a nonprofit where I want to teach students and train them how to use AI responsibly and provide software for their learning experience. So I wanted to do a couple of things with new technology, and so I want to explore it. And so I have discovered OpenAI's Chat GPT-4. Well, it's GPT-4 basically with Dolly. And so Dolly is able to create images based upon text. So it can recreate images. It can create images based upon what prompt you give it. And so I gave it a prompt using my image, and I said to Dolly, use my image and place me in a teaching scenario of my dreams with students and I sitting around and engage in blissful learning. I asked it also to please have all of us work together outside in Port Huron, where by the beautiful lake with the bridge in the background and make it with lots of colors and vivid imagery. And let's see what it gave us. So this is what it gave me. And be mindful that this was at the very beginning of when I started to use Dolly. So this was maybe about 6 months ago, and I'm sure it could do a little bit better, if I did it today, but this is what it gave me, so not bad. Next, I asked it to create or recreate a cartoon-like image of my husband and I, and this is what it gave me, so not bad. I don't know why it gave my husband glasses, but okay, we'll go with that. Then I asked it to please recreate an image of my two dogs, my pit bull with this happy-go-lucky spirit, and also my Basenji with his classy, pretentious, and prissy Basenji-like image. So this is what it gave me. I'm not sure why my pit bull is not included in that, but I'll take that. And finally, I asked it to recreate and generate a cartoon-like image of me and my three kids. And this is what it gave me. Not really sure why it read the images this way. I wanted to start playing with it again to ask it to recreate some images for me to get it better than what it gave me. I was a little bit nervous on what it was going to generate if I asked it again, but maybe I'll run it again and see if it has gotten better with reading our images and faces. So as you can see, AI is not always accurate, especially when it comes to minorities and people of color. So we've seen a little bit of that bias and a little bit of that unableness to read exactly what you give it, but it gets better over time. So I'm curious to know in the chat if you have also created images with ChatGPT, either through text or re-imaging, and what has been your experience. I would love to hear that. If you can put that in the chat or just kind of chime in, that will be awesome. So what I want to go over today and what I'm hoping that can be our objectives, our learning objectives, is to talk about the foundations of AI and education. Also want to talk about how faculty can foster critical thinking skills with using the power of AI. I also want to make sure that we understand how we learn and redefine the learning and objectives and the learning experiences when it comes to using AI in the classroom. And also, I hope that we can take away from this how to help students use AI in the classroom responsibly. Looking in the chat, and you guys have definitely talked about using AI to regenerate and create images, so that is awesome. Um, so Sherry says, I have not done much with it yet. Mostly failed results. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. It's been a hit or miss, and I've used some great images in this slide presentation. So let me know what you think. So I'm really not going to go into great detail about the foundations of AI and what it is. I'm sure that those of you who are a part of this conversation understand some of the basics of what AI is. But how do we get here? How do we get here in 2024 where AI is taking over everything that we do in on the internet space and even with our phones, in the classroom, and every single industry. I'm seeing how there's new AIs being populated and generated even with my phone. I can turn on an app that I've used for years and years and years and never had any kind of generative AI functions. And so it just kind of appeared. And so that tells me that it's going to be in every single aspect of what we do. So how do we get here? Basically, AI started in the 1950s. So this is nothing new. We are just hearing about it now because it's getting popularity and traction is more accessible. So in 1956, John McCarthy coined the term AI. AI learns by improving and analyzing data over time. And as you can see, the generated images that I created about a few months ago will be drastically different when I start to recreate them today, or even tomorrow. So by the 2000s, and it's funny as I'm looking at 1990s, because when I say in the 1900s, my youngest son says, Mom, you were born in the 1900s. And it's kind of funny to me to kind of hear him say that, but by the 2000s, it said that AI systems began to outperform human-like recognizing speech and speech patterns. And so today, as we know, AI is in everything, almost everything that we do, from voice recognition to voice generated image generation, and all these generative things that once humans created, now AI is creating them for us. And in technology, it is said that by 2030, it's going to contribute $15.7 trillion to the global economy. So we all know that AI is not going anywhere. It's here to stay. It's generating money. Businesses are using it. And in fact, 8% in 2023, 8% of educational institutions are using AI. So that's only 8%, whereas 77% in 2023, just last year, of businesses are said to either be using AI today or are strategically figuring out how to incorporate it in their business practices. So there is a gap there between what is being taught and what is being used in the actual workspace. And if you think about it, education and educators like us are supposed to be preparing our students for the workforce. We're hopefully training them to get a job in the industries that they choose. And if businesses right today are already using AI and expecting students to come in with that knowledge, I think it's time for us to really revisit what we're teaching them and how we're teaching them. So in general, AI is technology that is designed to think and learn like humans. Think of recommendations like your Siri and your Alexa, and think of when Siri came out, when we were all talking about, hey Siri, can you turn on the music? And my Siri just came on. Sorry about that. So when we think of how long ago that was part of that was AI. Generative AI creates new content by analyzing vast amounts of data and pattern recognition. So think Dolly, think ChatGPT. Algorithms are basically the building blocks of all of these programs. There are the series of instructions that programmers give these tools to be able to generate the content that is designed to perform. So this is considered to be exciting. This is probably the most exciting time in education. So if you think back, this is really nothing new to education. There have been shifts from industries that have definitely impacted the educational institution. So this is nothing new. We can think of when spell check became a thing, or calculators, or the internet even. I remember my freshman year of college, going to my library and going to the computer lab, and was given a sheet of paper where they said to get on the World Wide Web, type in www dot. And so we were looking at this thing like, what is this? And so we were sitting with these big blocks of computer screens, and we were literally typing in www dot, and we were going into this whole new world of information. So we're seeing how technology just changes and shifts the way that we do things. I remember going and getting the card catalogs from the library and actually having to physically go and check out books. Well, now students can have immediate access to literature, and so this whole technology shift is nothing new. So education has been the cornerstone of society, shaping the minds of future generations. But our educational systems have been struggling to keep up with the pace of the changes of technology. It's always the case, I feel, that when technology hits the market, education is kind of slow to adopt it. We as educators are here to teach our students on how to adapt and change and shift and grow. But the educational system, I feel, is a little bit slow with that. So we have the ability to either discourage learners or or elevate the learning process to help students solve the world's toughest problems. So let's reimagine for a moment AI as a disruptor. So here you see like an older image of, the professor standing there with the book and dictating to students, and students jotting down at the very best way that they can all the words verbatim that the instructor is saying, as fast as they can. To now the future of the schools as labs and learning environments where AI can help elevate their learning experience. And this is one image that I did use Dolly to recreate or create an image. So not bad, not bad. I like a lot of color. And so I'm always asking AI to give me a lot of color and excitement in my images. And so I think it did a pretty good job. So think of AI as a disruptor that allows students to solve more complex problems, focus on the learning process, and become more critical thinkers, and also more strategic thinkers. So it's almost kind of like, I look at it as AI is giving students the fundamental resources, it's giving the processes, it's giving the structure. And so now students are able to take those processes in that structure to expound upon it, to build upon it, to use it to solve more complex problems than just relying on the process itself. And so, usually in education, we tend to take on the fight or flight response when it comes to technology. So, fight would be, don't allow this to even happen, don't allow this to come into our spaces, cut it off, turn it off, we don't want it anymore. Or the flight response, where we kind of take on the role of, I will just ignore this and teach the way I've always been teaching. Please put in the chat, what experience did you provide, or how did you respond when AI when you first heard of AI? Were you a fighter or were you a flighter? Go ahead and feel free to reply. As far as how I responded, I was a fighter for sure. I wanted to fight this thing. I was like, you know what? Our students are not going to be able to learn. They're going to take away everything that we're trying to, give our students, and we're trying to teach them how to write and how to read and how to do all these things. And now, if this thing is doing it for them, then it's like, what are we doing? So I was definitely a fighter. Um, so how many of you were fighters? Go ahead and put that in the chat, or go ahead and chime in. Or how many of you were flighters? Like, I'll just keep teaching the way I've always been teaching, and this is not going to disrupt my pattern. Let me know what kind of reaction that you had when you first learned about ChatGPT and AI and what it does for student learning. Um, so I can tell you that, let me go to the chat real quick and take a look here. So, yep, fighters, you wanted to embrace. Sherry says, I was skeptical, but wanted to get into using it effectively. Absolutely. Thank you for, yeah, I had to find some funny little gifts there. But basically what's happened for me is that kind of fight mode, is that I wanted to learn all that I could about AI so that I could fight it. I was like, well, I got to learn my enemy, right? I have to kind of, study my enemy and see what it's all about. And from doing that, I really discovered that this thing is not as scary as I thought. So much so that it can be used as a tool to help grow and shape and redefine and evolve, in a sense, how we look at learning. If we think about it, we come from elementary school and middle school and high school learning almost the same exact way. We go into college where there's instructors that's sitting there with all of this wealth of knowledge, and we're sitting there in awe, like, wow, how does this instructor or professor have all of this knowledge, and how can I get it? Right. And so we're trying to be focused on becoming these little versions of these instructors that have this gift of knowledge, and we want to get it too. So we're taught the same way, where in fact AI has been able to really kind of shift it a little bit. So it's not necessarily about the process, but it's about how we learn, and if we're learning, and what are we doing with that knowledge to solve real problems. So the truth is, technology is evolving way too fast to really combat it. And the solutions to really combat it really cannot keep up with the pace of AI. So do we combat it by monitoring? So we're thinking about how we're sitting in front of the computer, or we have papers in front of us, and we're like, wow, that sentence structure is really good. I wonder if they use Chat GPT for that. Or, there's no misspellings in this paper. I wonder if they're using Grammarly for that. If we're really monitoring and we're really stuck on this whole idea of, we have to police, we have to monitor, we have to kind of get these students and charge them with, with using these tools to write for them. What are we really creating in terms of the classroom environment? Are we building trust? What about responsibility, or even independent learners, or even having a passion for learning? If we take on the monitoring position, we have to really think about what that means to our students, and what that means from the student perspective, where it's like, wow, I have all these tools at my disposal to help me where I struggle. And so if my instructor is not guiding me through it, or if they're not telling me how, when, and where to use it, or if I can even use it, then how are you building a trusting environment within the classrooms? And so I think that's where the part of the learning process happens, is when instructors can build that trust, build that responsibility, create independent thinkers, and actually give students a passion for learning. That's where we evolve in the learning process. Remember that you are in control. So I look at AI and the instructor as this sort of ninja to where they now have the capability of providing the process and also the human experience and truly engage and connect students in the most humanist perspective in the most humanistic ways. So I would just suggest to consider to stop trying to be the big brother and start building trusting relationships with your students. Be open and honest with your students and say, hey, look, I know about this technology and I know that you're probably wanting to use it. And if I say don't use it, and that's going to create that curiosity where it's like, I wonder why you're saying don't use it. Let me go see what's going on here. I mean, that's kind of how teenagers and young adults kind of think about things. I would also encourage to stop ignoring it. It's not going to simply go away. We have to figure out how to work with AI and how to help teach our students how to use it to solve real world problems. And I'm sure all of you are not thinking about this, but stop thinking that you're going to lose your jobs over it. I believe that the future belongs to those who navigate with it or who navigate through it. Again, just remember that you are in control. So this fight or flight kind of way of thinking, I believe there is this golden opportunity somewhere in the middle there where we don't want to completely just provide it and have no guardrails around it. We want to provide some framework around it. And we will also want to invite or reinvigorate the creativity and the emotion and the humanistic perspective that only humans bring to the classroom environment. There is this unique opportunity to reshape education, I believe. And I believe that it's forcing us to go the human side instead of going all the way over to the robotic or the AI side. So let's take a look at and talk about what that means. So I want to kind of set a framework of what learning is. And if you can help me out here, I found this general learning definition. And if you agree with this definition, go ahead and put a 1 in the chat. Or if you want to reframe this definition, go ahead and chime in or put your own definition in the chat. But what I've come up with as far as learning goes is, as far as the traditional definition, is the process of getting and understanding through study, experience, and application. Just a general overview definition of learning. So if you kind of agree with that, go ahead and put a 1 in the chat. If you're like, it's missing some elements there, go ahead and either chime in or put that in the chat and let me know what you think. When it comes to intelligence, I also wanted to provide another workable definition, a traditional definition. And if you agree with the intelligence definition of the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills, if you typically or generally agree with that definition, go ahead and put a 2 in the chat. If you don't agree with that definition, go ahead and provide your own definition or some other context around that in the chat, or feel free to chime in. Let me know what you think in terms of the definition of intelligence. Definitions, and thank you for providing those responses there. But in terms of those definitions, they typically tend to favor the kind of processes that machines are really good at. Those two traditional definitions, the machines are already capable of doing pretty much what those definitions are focused on. So when it comes to things like chess, yeah, it can beat chess. Trivia can provide all the trivia you need. It can provide the chat, the memory, the math problems, recommendations. It can sort, it can figure patterns and sort and file, can do all these things. So that's kind of the problem with those two traditional definitions. And I love how you're adding value to those definitions, because that's exactly what I want to look at as well, is how do we redefine those definitions now with the use of AI that can do all of those things that those definitions are pretty much stating machines can do those things. So if learning is supposed to be the process of getting to an understanding through study, experience, and application, then why should the process matter? Why should we just be focused on what kind of process it is when we want to get to an understanding? The process really shouldn't really truly matter. So I love the quote from John Warner, who is a educational leader in terms of strategy and in terms of instructional design. And he says that the reason the appearance of this technology is so shocking is because it truly forces us to confront what we value rather than letting the status quo churn along unexamined. So I believe, is making us examine the way in which the process of learning is. Should the process change? And this is what AI is forcing us to do. So I believe that AI forces educators to evaluate what we teach, why we teach it, and how we teach it. It's really forcing us to really evaluate those student learning objectives. It's making us look at how the classrooms are constructed, how students engage, and what they're taking away. And if what they take away from the classroom, if they can truly apply it to real world situations. So we all can remember the question, when will I ever use this in real life? Well, now AI is making us and forcing us to be able to answer those questions. What we as educators should keep in mind is that we are here to help our students learn how to approach a concept and break it down into organized bite-sized pieces. Really take information and then go through that information, break it down and build it back up. Students should learn how to do that. And AI can help, but then we want AI to be able to help them to do that on their own as well. Learn how to get to the root of a problem and offer tangible and practical solutions, and also analyze situations in more complex ways, understanding the solution to the actual process. So I believe also that students will truly invest in their learning if they can connect what they are learning in the classroom and then apply it to real life with real benefits. They will become invested learners and not take the shortcuts. And how many of you here see our students kind of looking at this as being able to take a shortcut? If that's the case, we need to change the ways in which we approach AI and how they look at AI in terms of their learning experience. If a student is looking at this technology and they're like, you know what, I have 10 papers to do in 1 week, and they all have to be properly formatted in APA, and they all have to have all these citations, and they all have to have these formulas, and I don't know how to really get through that on my own, then sure, ChatGPT and some of these other tools are going to look very appealing. And so we got to figure out, is that the case? Should we be focused on just getting through the assignment, or do we want them to understand how to critically look at a situation and also learn how to solve a problem with it? So I want you to hold on for a minute. I'm not advocating that we completely, throw away all of our student learning objectives and our books and all these things. I want you to be proud of the work that Baker College, CTE, and the AI committee are there, what we're doing to provide the knowledge, the education, and the tools that you need to be successful. And remember how I talked about 8% of educators or educational institutions are using AI, they're not even still talking about it. So Baker College is talking about how to use AI. And I think that as educators, we should be proud of the fact that they're taking a leadership position on helping us solve this problem. So I want to take a look for a moment at some student learning objectives. These student learning objectives are, let's see here. These student learning objectives are from the COM 1020 course, I believe. And I want to take a look at some of these learning objectives, and I want to make sure that you all can see my screen okay. Let's see here. So I want to go through just a couple of these. And what I did was I took some of the learning objectives and I thought about how they might shift just a little bit or even expand with the use of AI. So let's take a look at the thesis development. Just this past week, I've asked my students to develop a thesis. So with the learning objective, they have to, students will be able to formulate clear and arguable thesis statements and guide their essays and presentations to effectively convey their main ideas. So then I thought about how could AI enhance this student learning objective? And pretty much the same, but students will formulate arguable thesis statements, incorporating AI recommendations and improving clarity, strength, and position within their text or presentations. So let me give an example of what this looked like in my classroom. So we were working through how to formulate a thesis, how to take a main idea, and how to identify the target population, how to get to a position within your topic. And so we were working through how to take an idea and formulate it into a thesis statement. And so then I asked for a student to share one of their thesis statements that they came up with on their own. I had a student working with them one-on-one. They were able to give me a really great thesis statement. And then I asked that student if I could take that thesis statement and pop it into ChatGPT and ask if they can generate something that could enhance it. They said sure. So I whipped out my ChatGPT, I plugged it in, and it gave me something that I thought was not better than the student's original thesis statement. They actually agreed, which I thought was really brilliant. So that was one time where we used ChatGPT and we discovered that what the student came up with was far more advanced than what ChatGPT was able to give. Sometimes you can ask to regenerate it, but I told the student that that was brilliant. Let's stick with it. Then we had another student that we were formulating thesis statements, and they had three statements that they couldn't figure out how to create a true thesis statement out of those three sentences. So after walking with the student on how to take those three concepts and formulate a thesis statement, I asked if I could take those statements and pop it into ChatGPT and see what it gave me. It gave me a pretty good, well-written version of a thesis statement by using those three different sentences. I asked the student if they thought that was great. They said it was wonderful. If they could use it, I said sure. And the reason why I did this was because the student came up with the ideas on their own. The student gave me three sentences that was around their topic. It was around their focus area. It was around their position. And then the Chat GPT was able to take those three sentences and recreate and reconstruct their thesis statement. I did ask for them to retool it though, not take it and lift it, but to put their own spin on the statement. And we talked about if that's considered plagiarism, should they cite ChatGPT? And I told them to think about it like this. If you're using Grammarly in your papers and you are looking, Grammarly is suggesting to change a word or to recreate a sentence or spell check, things like that. That is really no difference than what we're doing with reconstructing thesis statements. As long as you're not asking it to give you something, you blindly take it and dump it into your paper, you can use it to generate ideas and kind of reconstruct what you already have. Can provide ways in which you may have used ChatGPT in your classrooms. Do you think that was a good idea to kind of have students rework or retool what they've already generated? What's your thoughts on my approach in using ChatGPT in that way? You're really interested in seeing what you all had to say. And feel free to chime in as well as we're going through this. If you have any questions or if you want to add comment, please feel free to go ahead and chime in. and also to add some value on how you've used ChatGPT or any other AI programs in your classroom. So, AI or AI in general, ChatGPT, AI in general, is pretty much revolutionizing learning. It's forcing educators to reevaluate the ways in which we do things in the classroom. I never would have thought that I would be using a tool like ChatGPT in the class, but if you use it strategically, it helps students to open up another side to them that maybe was kind of closed off before. So we're forced to look at the ways in which we teach, the methodology, the way that we approach a situation. Um, think of project-based work. Project-based work can absolutely help us to use AI and ChatGPT and other AI systems in the classroom, but focus on project-based work where they have to bring part of their knowledge that already exists to the situation. Student directed learning is also a creative way. Creating posters is another great way as well. Assessing student learning e- evolution evaluations is collaborative projects with technology is a great way. Engaging in critical thinking models is another way as well. Put in the chat some other ideas that you all have had when you think of ways that Chat GPT or AI can revolutionize the classroom. Here are some approaches that I came up with in terms of ways in which we can use these tools in the classroom. The one way that I think is pretty effective is the flipped classroom model, where students are asked to interact with ChatGPT at home to learn new concepts and explore topics. So they go home and they take a situation or a topic, and then they use ChatGPT to explore it, and then they bring that to the classroom when they come back. What this does is it encourages active learning and allows students to learn at their own pace. And it also brings in other students and creates a collaborative environment as well. Interactive Q&A is also a great strategy. Integrating ChatGPT into the classrooms through Q&A sessions where students can ask ChatGPT some questions based upon what you introduce the question to them. What this does, it encourages students who are typically quiet and typically are unsure of their position to then go to some of these large language models and ask it questions and then propose it to the class. It creates a way for students who are kind of unsure, because I've had that happen so many times, where I would ask students to let me know what you think, tell me how you feel, what do you think about this? And they're quiet because they're really not sure. Well, if they go to Chat GPT and they are able to pull some concepts and some ideas in relation to the question, they can chime in with confidence. And I always say there's no wrong answers. And what this does is you don't just leave it there, you start to build upon it. So yes, ChatGPT gave you the answer to my question, but what do you think about that answer? Give me another layer to it. How do you see this translating in other cultures, in other regions, in other demographics? So never stop there, go a little bit deeper, and then that's creating a way for students to think and engage a little bit more with the help of ChatGPT and AI. The benefit of this is you are creating an environment of engagement. And if we want our students to be completely engaged, they might need some help. Um, I can say, and I want you all to think about this as well, that I believe that students typically are unengaged when they're not really sure, when they're not sure that, the answer that they're going to give is accurate, is on target. But if they're using this assistant, then they can feel more confident in their engagement. This is exciting, and I'm actually working on one right now, but you actually can create your own GPT. So OpenAI's Chat GPT software has created a space where it's closed. to where you can create your own GPT, so you can literally build out your actual robot to kind of help with whatever task that you need to have. So this is built with guardrails, meaning that they don't share your data if you opt in for this feature. They don't teach and learn off of your data, which is a good thing. So your data is kept private for the most part. And you can train it on your own information. So you can create a chat bot, you can feed it information, and then that chatbot will then use that information to then start to create content. So, for example, I gave the example of nursing, that you can literally create a chat bot for nursing, or any other industry for that matter, but I use nursing as an example. You can train it on how to provide definitions and explanation. So give a little bit of a deeper explanation into the definitions that they need to learn. You can build quizzes around your data. You can walk students through the processes, and you can build out case studies. Now, also, and then you can also train it on things like drug information and side effects. Now, keep in mind that you are training your own GPT, which is really awesome. So, taking that training data, plugging it into the GPT, and then asking it to do things with the data is awesome. I'm working on creating a GPT right now, for my son who is studying Spanish. And so what I'm doing with that is I'm taking a GPT, I'm taking the software, creating a Spanish GPT, infusing it and uploading all of this Spanish information that he needs to know, and then it's taking that information and then building out teachable learning experiences for him to learn Spanish. He can interact with it. It doesn't train on the data that he gives it, but you do have to keep in mind that any sensitive information, you want to be very careful, especially using open source models like ChatGPT and GPT-4. Also, another approach which I love is project-based learning. Now, project-based learning is when you could use ChatGPT to facilitate project-based learning, to brainstorm ideas, gain preliminary research, or give feedback on project drafts. Also use it to coordinate ideas, generate conflict resolution strategies. It helps to really promote the hands-on learning and collaborative experiences among students. It also helps students learn how to use AI as a tool to problem solve and to be creative in their practices as well. The last one that I absolutely love, and I've done this before, is the peer teaching and feedback strategy, where you can take students and break them into 5 or 6 groups, or 5 or 6 students on one team, and actually have them to use ChatGPT to create summaries and explanations and presentations, and actually then designate a teacher to teach their little subgroup. These mini peer classes, where I've used plenty of times in my teaching strategy, where they actually had to come up with the lesson plan by using ChatGPT and actually teach their students the actual lessons. This has worked wonders on engagement, where students who are typically shy about sharing in a bigger class, they now have these small mini classes where they're learning from each other, which is really cool. Now, I do want to put out this disclaimer before you go and start asking students to subscribe and to put in their email accounts and create all these accounts for Chat GPT and all these other open sources, that you definitely check with your leadership, your leaders, your directors of your programs, to make sure that this is something that is okay to do. The way that I approach it is that I use my account. So I don't have any students creating their own accounts. Now, if they have their own accounts on their own, then they can definitely use them. But if I'm asking them to use it in the classroom, I go to my account, I plug in information that they can see on the board, and then they can see it that way. Or I would show them how I create it, and then if they would want to create themselves, they are more than welcome to do that. But if you want to kind of take these strategies and apply them into your classroom, definitely check with your leaders and department heads before you just go and say, hey, class, let's go ahead and open up all these accounts and subscribe. Make sure that that is okay to do. Um, Finally, I want to also emphasize that this is a great way for students to engage in ethical dialogues due to technology, privacy, and also just really understanding some of the debates around the conflicts around the social impacts of AI. This prepares students to think more critically about their data and think more critically about what they share and what AI is capable of doing, and also its limitations. So I always stress the fact that if you're going to talk about AI, talk about the things that AI is not good at. It is not good at protecting privacy. It is not good at understanding and reading the room. It is not good at understanding the context of emotion and philosophical understandings and also discrimination and those type of things. And so as it learns, it grows with us, but know that it has limitations, and also know that in no way should we ever plug in sensitive student information into these open source AI systems, because they use our data. They're using our data, and we don't want students to be exposed or be given these systems information that is sensitive and private. Let's see, I think I lost the chat. So I wanted to see if anyone had any questions or if anyone wanted to chime in before I keep going. Um, I kind of lost it, so I wanted to see what you guys were chatting about or thinking about as we move through this presentation.
We got a bunch of stuff in the chat, Nikita.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've been talking about a lot of stuff. Um,
Okay.
yeah, there's a lot of interesting things in here. So maybe when you're done with this piece, when we do the Q&A, you can find the chat part again.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And if and as I'm going, since I'm not seeing the chat, if anyone wants to chime in or give some experiences you've had, definitely feel free to do so. You are more than welcome to chime in. Um, but in terms of classroom strategies, I feel that there is learning in the struggle, right? So when students are struggling with things like, how do I come up with this? Or what do you mean how I feel about that? And I don't know what to think about that. And I just don't know how to feel. It's okay. They're actually learning. And so give them that space and that ability to do that kind of engagement that they probably aren't really used to. But as a faculty, as a instructor, I would encourage you to encourage problem solving in the classroom. Have students discover and reflect and take action, which is part of the learning process. So talk to them always about how they're going to use this in the real world, because they're expected to do so when they go for those jobs. Ask questions about meaning. What do you believe? Like, what do you think this means? How do you think this translates into other cultures, into other regions, into other people groups? Also reassure students that there's no wrong answers. It's really all about the thinking and growing process, and also what this could mean in different communities as well. Ask students to connect learning to real world is always a favorite, because they want to know how they can take this and use it. And when you approach it in different ways, and if you have Chat GPT to help them approach it in different ways as well, that learning button can then start to go off. Sometimes for me, if I hear things in a different way, I learn it differently. I hear it differently. And so don't be afraid to take a concept maybe that you have introduced and take it to Chat GPT. And the thing I like the most about some of these chatbots is you can completely change the learning module. So you can change it from talk to me as if I'm 5, or explain this as if I'm a freshman, or explain this as if I'm 14. You can really dial it up or down to fit the learning strategy of your classroom. Also help the pieces fit together by, talking about those student learning objectives and how they fit into real life scenarios with the use of AI, and help to connect that context and that integration. Ask students how they feel, and sometimes it's kind of hard to, have students engage in the feeling aspect, but that is definitely important to ask them how they feel. Encourage awareness, allow empathy and relationships. So if you think about computers, and what AI is, we think about computers are the box, and we want students to think outside the box. So they only follows the rules that AI follows the rules that we give it. So AI is the box. We want students to think outside of it while using the box, using the tools to get to where they need to go. And so, in conclusion, make AI a co-teacher. That's a great strategy. It can also help, of course, your learning objectives and your lesson planning as well. Let's value human intelligence as more than computer processes. Get students to use parts of their brains that computers just don't have. Ask questions AI cannot. Don't be afraid to introduce it. Again, make sure that you're following the guidelines that your leadership gives you in terms of these tools. Encourage feelings, um, context, and emotion, reflection, and reasoning and thought. They can do this outside of AI and even with AI, and teach students how to use AI responsibly, ethically, and be aware of biases before introducing it into the classroom. And so that's pretty much all that I had for today. I just wanted to kind of show you my experience when using Chat GPT and creating the image. You can kind of see the prompt up there. I said, create a stunning, colorful, radiant image of a young college professor teaching outside. I guess now you can kind of see I love outside. I would love to be able to teach outside, but that's what I asked Chat GPT to do for me, and it created that image. And then I asked it to create, let's see, what other prompt did I use? It's kind of coming up. I think I asked it to create a colorful image of an African American woman teaching. There it goes. Um, Outside, with colors and rainbows. And this is what it gave me. So, you can use it to create images and to create things and just be creative with the prompts that you give it. So want to encourage you all to just explore and grow and learn and teach students on, encourage them how to use it in their learning and when they are asked to be creative as well. So that's all that I had. Thank you so much. And I wanted to see what you guys got going on in the chat.